Welcome to Life, Lessons, and Laughter with your host, Glenn Ambrose.
There I am. Hey, welcome to the show, everybody. So today is my last day in Maine, in the U.S. So I am heading back to the Dominican early tomorrow morning. So I figured I'd get in one more podcast for you guys, and I don't know, I can't really see in my camera, but might have some bags. A little tired. It's been a long couple weeks, but so here we are. So yeah, so I'll dive into it as I usually do. Just a preface as this goes, most of you know my father just passed away, so that's why I've been over here for the last couple of weeks, and that's why I'm tired. The emotion. Like a lot of people talk about getting tired physically, and what I've noticed over, I guess, my life is that physical exertion burns the least amount of energy, although that's what most people draw the line to. I found out that burning mental energy burns more energy than physical. If you're really focused and trying to learn something, or like when I was personal training, I'd be completely focused on my clients, and like I couldn't do that for 8 hours. I'd be mentally loopy, so I mean, I could do an 8-10 hour day, but I couldn't actually work with clients for 8 straight hours, or even probably, I don't even know if I could do 8 hours combined, maybe when I was younger. But the emotional burns the most amount of energy. So it's just been tough to keep up on sleep. But here we are, and here we go. So today I am talking about individual accomplishments. Why? Because it came to me. The concepts just kind of pop in, and I contemplate them. So, manifesting was the number one word for 2024. So this kind of falls in line with that type of discussion. It's very much on the surface of many people's minds. Why? Because we're leaning towards the spiritual, and what better if you're if you're inducing a spiritual awakening on a planet, and on that planet you have a bunch of people that are ego identified and have been raised and conditioned in societies of acquisition and accomplishment, and individuality even is a part of it, and acquiring for yourself, and quite honestly hoarding. I mean, we have these shows of these hoarders, and they just save everything way more than they need, right? And we look at them and we go, oh my God, those poor souls. Like it's just, they're obviously caught up in some sort of obsession about things, and an attachment to them, and they're not capable of throwing them away, or just using logic, I guess, to keep what you need and not to keep what you need. Their obsession has blocked that logic, and we feel bad for them, and we understand that it's, that there's some level of dysfunction there, that there's an attachment, and then when people hoard money, we put them on the cover of Forbes and celebrate them, so it's while billions of people are suffering in the world, and people are sitting on billions and trillions of dollars, and it's like, oh my God, they're so wonderful. So if you live in a society like that, what better way to get people interested in spirituality than to open up a doorway where they feel that they can get whatever they want, which is basically manifesting. Oh, I can get what I want. Oh, I can manifest money. I can manifest things. I can manifest a spouse. I can manifest, so, and, of course, I've done podcasts on manifesting specifically if you want to hear more about that. But this is, it's a way of coming into spirituality. So getting what you want is going to capture many, 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 many people's attention, because that's what people think that they want. And they think it's what they want because they think it's going to bring them happiness. So what if you're trying to capture people's attention and introduce them to spirituality, introduce them to broader concepts? What better way to introduce them to that than through manifestation? It's beautiful. It's just a wonderful doorway for people to start learning about different concepts and broader concepts and things like that. So along those lines, I'm talking about individual accomplishment. So there's this thing, like, sometimes it's hard to differentiate between the ego and the true self. And I think one of the main reasons is because we get positive feedback from both internally. Like the way the universe is set up, it's just when we do something beneficial to ourselves or for ourselves or for others, there's this innate feedback system that's automatic that you just get a positive response. So if you help people, you feel good about yourself. If you take a deep breath and hold in the oxygen so your body is getting flooded with oxygen, you can feel a sensation of, I don't know what you'd call it, peace, contentment, joy, something pleasurable inside. Why? Because you're giving your body what it needs. You're doing something beneficial, right? So since the universe is set up like that and it's just innate and we get positive feedback, may it be a subtle feeling or something larger, we, of course we like that because it's pleasurable. So and the whole point of it is to get it. That's our guidance system. It's to get us doing more things that make us feel good. The problem is that our ego, when we're identified with the ego, it doesn't do this when we're not identified with the ego. Like if we understand our ego and we understand that it's part of us, but we're not identified with it as being who we are, then when it gives us these pleasurable responses, we don't take it so seriously. We're like, yeah, okay, whatever. It's really not that important if our ego feels good about us, because our ego is horrible at making decisions and it doesn't understand the world we're in and is only focused on our individuality and us personally. And it's just not that important. But we get pleasurable feedback from that. And when doing good things, and when we are identified with our ego, that's the real problem, is because we get addicted to doing things that our ego gives us positive feedback for. What does our ego give us positive feedback for? Anything that creates separation. Anything that individualizes us, because the ego is concerned with us, the individual. It's our warning system. It's our protection system. And it worked very well when we weren't identified with it as who we are. It said, hey, watch out. There's a tiger over there. Oh, no. It helped protect us from physical danger and sometimes other types of danger. But over the years, we get identified with our ego as who we are. We think like for me, my ego says I'm Glenn Ambrose. That's my name. and I have brown hair that's graying. and I live in the Dominican Republic, and I've had all these experiences. That's who my ego thinks I am, and I'm not that. I'm not identified with that as who I am. I'm a spiritual being having a human experience, and that human experience encompasses those things that I just mentioned, but it's not who or what I am. I'm energy. I'm a spiritual being. I am love and vibration. That's what I truly am. It's like looking at a tree and thinking the word tree accurately describes it, or saying, well, it's a brown tree with bark on it and it has leaves. Oh, and branches. Oh, well, now you've captured everything that tree is. No, of course not. Those are just labels. It actually diminishes what that tree is. That tree is energy. That tree is life. That tree is an expression of the divine. That tree has essence. So we strip all that when we just focus on a label. So we do it with ourselves as well, just being identified with our ego as who we are, our mind-made identity as who we are. So this is why it gets confusing, because, most people think they are their mind-made self. So if I think that I'm Glenn Ambrose and that's who and what I am, then anything that affects that will knock me around, right? But if I know I'm an eternal spiritual being that's based in love and energy, and that I can never die, and this is a temporary experience that I'm going through, then I don't get knocked around so much, right? But so when you're identified with your ego, which, really most of us are, and I mean, if I'm honest, I am as well, not completely, I work on this daily. So I'm not as identified, but sure, I slip into unconsciousness and identification with the ego regularly. I'm sure daily, at least to some degree. There are at least some moments throughout every day that I am connected and identified with ego and interact with life through that way. So it's very common for all of us, even those of us on the spiritual path. And this is why it gets so confusing, because really, I had to think about this, and usually I can cut right through. But I did a podcast on pride a little while ago, and this is kind of along those lines, because there's this thing inside of us that says pride is good. We should feel pride. We should take pride in a job well done and being a good person. And and the further I dive into pride, I do not think we need to be prideful in any way, shape, or form. And this is part of the reason why it's coming at it a different way, though. I'm understanding that, like, when I look at my individual accomplishments, like when I woke up, I was a parent. So prior to being 35 years old, I didn't do anything for a long period of time. Not that was my choice, I lived in the same house that I've my entire life until I was 18. So that's 18 years in one house. I went through 13 years of school, including kindergarten. So but those weren't of my choice. Those were because I was made to, After that, I never did anything for long periods of time. I couldn't sustain it because I was drinking and I couldn't get out of my own way. So once I got sober and woke up spiritually, then my whole life started changing, and it was my choice, and I was capable of doing some things long term if I chose, right? So I look at those because they're bigger, so they're easier to see. So I look at being a father, right? And I'm going, because I just lost my father, and I think about all the things that he did for me, and then I think about myself raising my son, and he's 24 now, and doing absolutely wonderful. So the main Of course, I'm still his father and always will be, but the main crux of raising my son and guiding him, the majority of it is done. He's his own man. So, and I can still support and guide, but most of it's done. So, it takes a lot more energy when you're young. So when I look at that, and I try to apply a individual accomplishment mentality to that, I'm like, it's hard, because I look at it and I go, well, did I do good? This is kind of how I came in the door on this. I was looking at all the things that my father taught me, and I looked at my life when I wasn't capable of implementing what he taught me because I was lost and confused and caught up in alcoholism, etc. And then I looked at how I took those lessons and implemented them later, and I'm going, oh, okay, so wow, he did have an impact on me, and how much of that impact affected how I was as a father. And I start looking at that and I'm going like, well, yeah, there was definitely lots of good things that he did that helped make me the father that I was, or that I am. And I appreciate that. So that, and that's kind of how I saw it when I was focused on him. But then when I started focusing on me and what it was like to be a father, I was like, well, yeah, like I kept some of the things that he taught me and that were embedded in me, and I just duplicated them because I saw value in them and I saw how they worked, and I appreciated them. So I implemented them. And though that was kind of like a mind-based thing, it was kind of like a conscious thing to some degree, and when I fell short, I was slipping into unconsciousness. So to me, the good and the bad was kind of it was basically egoic. Like the good can be egoic too. We focus on the negative, but the good can be egoic too. And I had a good example of a father. So egoically, that became part of my identity and my thinking mind. So I used it, and some good came out of it. And then sometimes I didn't use it. And or sometimes I used negative aspects of it, of things that I was conditioned that I didn't really want to do, but unconsciously it was part of what being a father seemed like to me. I remember the first time I apologized to my son, he was like, I don't know, 3 years old or something. And it knocked me, because I had made a mistake and I owed him an apology. And when I thought about apologizing to him, this fear shot through me that I was going to lose control over him and he wasn't going to respect me. If I admitted that I had made a mistake, it was going to change the dynamic, and he wasn't going to look up to me as his father and listen to me or respect me. And I was like, whoa, 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 what's all that? And, that flushed up from my childhood. My father was very intelligent and he had his way of looking at things, and my way was very different. So in my house growing up, he was always right. And I didn't know, I think that was partially his personality, but it was also partially, because of me, because he would ask me like, what were you thinking? And I was literally like, I don't know. And he's like, well, it was you were inside your body doing it. You must have been thinking something. And I was like, yeah, that makes sense, but I don't know what to tell you. I don't remember having a thought that concluded that my actions were a good idea. I just found myself doing it. I was ADHD. I was spontaneous. I just found myself doing things. Now we call that living in the moment. being in the present moment when we're on the spiritual path all these years later. But I was a kid, and like I just was always in the present moment. I couldn't really control myself. I just would be like, okay, focus on the teacher, focus on the teacher. And then next thing you know, I'm throwing a piece of paper at the kid sitting next to me to try to entertain myself because I'm bored out of my mind. And I don't even really remember, I didn't think of it. I just, or maybe I did, I don't know. I just found myself doing it. And then sometimes I would even be throwing the paper and going like, oh, what am I doing? Like, if the teacher sees this, I'm going to get in trouble. And then all of a sudden the teacher would see it and I'd be getting in trouble. And I'm like, oh my God, what just happened? It was almost like I blacked out, you know, I would just find myself doing things. So he didn't understand that. And heck, I didn't understand it, you know? And then when you've got other people that are different, that don't understand you, telling you that what you're doing is wrong and you must have thought it through, you start believing that. You're like, maybe I did think it through. They seem to think that I thought it through. I don't remember anything, so maybe I did. Like, I don't. It was wild. It was wild growing up. But my point was that as a child, I didn't understand myself. I didn't understand the world in which we lived. I didn't understand my own behavior. I didn't understand why I was different. So I couldn't really explain it to my father, even when he asked. So of course he was always right, which being right all the time is the best way to feed your ego, which makes it an even bigger trap when you're highly intelligent and highly capable, because you can create patterns that make you think that you know everything because you're right so often. You have so much evidence. It's like nobody knows everything. Nobody's right all the time. So now I went down, I think, too far down this path. I'm having trouble getting back now. So I'll just, you know how I do. I'll just keep talking and we'll see if it reconnects. I do know that it was about feeling like you're right, you know, and being right, where I went off on my tangent to explain what I meant by that. But yeah, so, you know, oh, I was talking about the parenting. So when, you know, sometimes I would do things wrong just because it was the way that I was conditioned, like being right all the time. Oh, that's what I was talking about. I was talking about apologizing to my son. So, so like that dynamic of being right all the time was part of my unconscious belief system of what a father was. So I had to break out of that consciously and go and think through. But I remember the fear shooting through me when I thought about apologizing. I'm like, oh my God, I can't do that. But then I stopped and thought it through. Why do I feel that way? Where does that come from? Is that who I want to be as a father? Or is that one of the pieces that I want to put aside and adopt something different as I move forward? Being my own person, being my own, you know, representative of what a father should be. So when I did that, I did well because I thought through it consciously, you know. So I kind of, when I was contemplating this, I kind of saw two things. I saw me being a father, the good and the bad, through the ego. And then I saw the other part of being a parent, which was spiritual, which was fully conscious, which was connected to divine wisdom. And I've said this several times before. The best parenting I ever did was when I was in the present moment, when I was deeply connected, when I completely disconnected from the ego and went at it spiritually. That's the best parenting I ever did, because when you're connected to divine wisdom flows through you. So when I'm sitting there and I'm going, I don't know what to do, and I stop depending on me to figure it out, and then I just connect to source, and then all of a sudden ideas start coming in that are perfect. And I don't know, you know, I can't really quantify it because it came and went so fluidly that half the time I was doing it, I didn't even know I was doing it, you know? But I do remember several times specifically where my parenting came from divine wisdom. I didn't know what to do in a situation. And I just either intuitively or consciously chose to connect to source. And then all of a sudden ideas started coming through, or words started coming through, or actions started taking place, and they were perfect. And when that would happen, I would be like, there's no way, there's no way this is me. Like, I'm not that smart. There's no background to where I would have come up with this idea. There's no reasoning or logic that I can trace to any line of thinking that would have came up with this myself. This was divine wisdom. And those were the times that I handled things perfectly. So this is kind of how I first started contemplating this. So I was like, oh, okay. So should I really feel good about myself accomplishing things? Because I got the big land deal going on. I was just over here being the son that I wanted to be. I wanted to be here when my father passed. I wanted to help. So doing that, there's this certain thing that goes, Glenn, you did good. You came over here and you did good and you were helpful and you did the right thing. So there's a part of me that wants to feel that pride. And as it started coming up, I started looking at it and going, wait, do I really want to feel that? And that's what really sparked this. And I don't think I need to feel the pride, because when I compare it to living in the present moment, when I compare it to the things I mentioned in this podcast and things I've talked about previously, where I feel that it's divine wisdom flowing through me, using me as a vessel, flowing through me into this world. What may it be? Information, may it be ideas, may it be loving action, whatever it is. That to me is the best feeling in the world. One of my favorite things about life coaching since I started my business is that very early on, I understood that it wasn't me. I'm not doing it. I'm not even guiding this conversation. I know I'm not. I just shut my brain off and start babbling. And I get out of my own way, and whatever's supposed to come out comes out. And I trust that. And I know that sometimes it's going to resonate with some people and sometimes it's not. And sometimes my ego is going to pop in and say something, or I'm going to get off track a little bit, maybe because of my ego, maybe because some sort of ADHD, maybe divine wisdom wants it, but whatever. I just let it go and I don't try to control it. And lots of people have been helped. Literally millions of people have listened to my podcast, and many of them have been helped. And I've gotten lots of feedback over the years. So I'm not going to change it, because I know that the most beautiful, helpful, profound things that have ever come out of my mouth came out of my mouth when it was divine wisdom flowing through, not when I thought I knew things and took personal ownership of it. That feeling is way better. It's not like, I think egoically we think like, oh, if I take pride in something, that's the best, right? Like we go, oh, I'm a good person, and that ties to self-love. So it's like self-love is hugely important too, and we can have self-love without pride. This is part of what I want to talk about today. Self-love is extremely important, but it's different than pride. Pride separates. If you a little of something can be a good thing. Like if you have a little bit of pride in yourself, it can be okay. But it's really the self-love that we need. We need to love ourselves and value ourselves. And we don't need pride to do that. We don't need to say, I'm a good human being to love ourselves. We can love ourselves without our egoic identity at all. In fact, it's much easier to love ourselves if we're not identified with our egoic identity, our mind-made self, because that is based on humanity. And humanity, in our humanity, we are not perfect, and we have flaws and we make mistakes. Whereas in our eternal being, we're perfect, our spiritual being. So our self-love can come from that, and it's more pure. That's what we need to have. That's what we need to feed. We don't need, and when we have that and we look at this egoic identity and somebody's like, wow, I'm really, you must be really proud of yourself. We're like, ew. Like, I don't know if I really like the way that feels. I must be really proud of myself. Like, why? I didn't really do anything. Like, all I did was align with source and it flowed through me. That's what's happening when I'm doing the best. When I'm at my best, that's what's happening. When I am a good instrument for information, energy, or action to flow into this dimension from the other side based in love, that's when I'm at my best. That's when I'm filled with joy and fulfillment and love and bliss. And just the love is just emanating. Just, when you're feeling so good, and then you feel better. What's that song? There's some 70s song. Sometimes I feel bad when I get feeling better. When I'm feeling, I don't know. I can't think of it. Anyway, I do get a kick out of that song though. It's kind of cool. But that is like the end all be all to me, because it's pure. There's no separation. Not only do I feel connected to all there is and love, I feel the concept of oneness. I feel the connection with the divine. That's like so much more powerful than going, I'm a really good person. It pales in comparison. It just does. It's nothing compared to feeling connected to the divine. So, and it's one of the 7 deadly sins, I believe. And I think that this is why when we dive into it. But to me, I find it extremely interesting, because there's this part of me that says, well, having pride in a job well done is a good thing. Being proud of the way you handle the situation is a good thing. But it's like everything else that our society connects to. If it just makes us see, when I say that, it sparks our ego. See, this is what I was trying to talk about at the beginning of the podcast. It's kind of this full circle. So this is probably going to be a short podcast, because that's what happens. Like, the divine information comes full circle usually when I'm starting to wrap up. But it's that I'm sitting here and I'm like, oh, it's good to have pride in a job well done. It's good to be proud that you handle the situation right. And my ego, when I say those things, my ego goes, yeah, Glenn, there's nothing wrong with that. And I get this pleasurable little feeling. And that makes me think that pride is a good thing. Just like everybody else on the planet, right? But like most things that we feel right to us, in air quotes, that feel right, most things feel right to us because they're normal, not because they're actually right. It's because they're socially acceptable, or we've done them enough times to where they've become our norm. So they just feel right. So like, I experienced this when I woke up, spiritually, when I was getting sober. My sponsor was like, I've said this many times, is your life all messed up? Yes, it is. Okay, did you try to mess up your life? No, I didn't. Okay, would it be fair to say that your best thinking sucks? Yes, it would be fair to say that. So I became a blank slate, and I understood that I couldn't trust my thinking or my feelings because they're interconnected. So when something felt right to me, know what felt right to me? Drinking every day felt right to me. I know it might sound weird to you non-alcoholics, but you alcoholics are going to get it, or drug addicts. Like there was nothing more normal and appropriate than drinking. It just became my norm, and thinking, like my thinking got me to make bad decisions. And no matter how many bad decisions I made, and no matter how much my life got worse, I would just blame it on life or other people or whatever. And it wasn't my fault, and it was happening to me, and all that. So I would just rationalize it away, and I would keep using the same mentality to make the same decisions. So I kept creating the same problems, right? When I woke up and I didn't trust my thinking anymore, it was the weirdest thing. It's like Bizarro World there on Seinfeld. Uncommon sense becomes common sense. Common sense becomes uncommon sense. So like everything, that the way my brain interacted with life, the way that I understood things, the way I chose how to behave completely changed. I had to learn a whole new way of interacting with life and thinking, because my old way that felt normal and comfortable and made sense to me created my problems. So we have to be careful. Just because something feels normal or comfortable. I was just talking to several people about this last week. Do not trust your feelings and your thinking when you're trying to change. Do not trust them, because they're the very things that got you into the mess that you're in now. If you're trying to change and you think that you should monitor, like go by the way you feel or the way you think, well, you're mistaken, because the way you feel and the way you think was created in your previous life up until this point. And if you want to experience different things, you need to become a different person. You need to interact with life differently. And it feels very uncomfortable, and it feels weird. It feels weird to have a thought that is 100% right, and that's exactly how you're supposed to handle the situation, and then go, wait, time out. I can't handle, maybe I shouldn't handle this situation this way. Maybe I should talk to some people I trust. Maybe I should talk to my life coach and talk it out and see if there's another way to come at this. And then they do, and they're like, oh my God, that was so close. I almost made this huge mistake. And it's like, right, because you can't trust your thinking. Einstein knew this. One of my favorite quotes: you can't fix a problem with the consciousness that created it. The consciousness that created the problem is your way of thinking. So your way of thinking got you into a place in life where you're overwhelmed and you don't know how to handle it, and there's problems. Okay, well, your way of thinking created that. Life didn't do it to you. I hate to, I hate to burst that bubble, but let me tell you that whatever you're experiencing in your life is based on your way of thinking. Now, I understand that, I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I understand that we've been conditioned by a dysfunctional society, and we've been conditioned by dysfunctional people, sometimes parents, sometimes teachers, sometimes friends, sometimes bosses, sometimes coworkers, whatever. We've been conditioned to look at things in ways that don't work. So I'm not saying it's anybody's fault. I'm saying it needs to be changed if you're going to experience something different, right? So this is the traps of the ego. If something seems right to us, the way we're looking at it, the way we think or the way we feel, we just, oh, well, then that's right. So I want to feel good. It makes me feel a pleasurable sensation in my body if I say, oh, wow, I was really a good son. Oh, okay. Well, but should I be feeling that way? See, like I'm disconnected with my ego enough that if I'm doing something that isn't particularly beneficial to me in my spiritual self, my true self, that like my ego doesn't run me as much. So when just because my ego is saying, yeah, Glenn, it's good to feel pride in something you did that was proper. I can only do that so much before my true self goes, Glenn, that's not really pure. Like to me, my body processes the energy of things like regularly. So I can be over here saying, oh, this feels good. Pride. Yeah, I should be prideful. This feels good. Egoically, right? And then all of a sudden my true self is like, Glenn, that's not pure love energy. It's not purity. That's what you're feeding yourself. It has some positivity to it, but it's not pure positivity. There's a drawback off of that as well. And I'm like, oh, once that captures my attention, then I dive into it. And that's how these podcasts come about. You know, I dive into it and I go, oh, so is that good? Is pride good? What's the alternative to pride? You know, like I kind of compare the two, and it's, and then I start seeing the truth, and it's like, oh yeah, the pride is just egoic. It's attached to my mind-made self. My true self, my spiritual self, I don't need pride. Pride pales in comparison to what I feel when I'm participating in the oneness and love and connected with divinity. Like it's I don't need that at all. Why take a temporary fleeting pat on the back because of a moment of action when you can feel the eternal bliss, you know, of being part of an energy that encompasses the entire universe that's filled with love. You know, it's like, and I know, you know, in this human life, I'm not capable of completely absorbing all that bliss. um, but I can feel aspects of it, you know. So so yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to kind of explain. Hopefully, you know, I know that I went full circle, so I'm thinking that I'm thinking I'm assuming, I don't know because I'm not depending on my mind, but I'm assuming that there was some sort of beginning, middle, and end to this podcast. um, and that a fair amount of information was shared, enough for you guys to start thinking about this concept on your own. You know, that's really just listening to this and going, oh, there might be some truth to what Glenn says. Yeah, maybe. Oh, I kind of see it. And then going about your life, that does nothing. That is not going to change your life. It might make you feel like you're doing something to better yourself, but it's not really. Um, we have to actually implement this stuff into our lives. We actually have to contemplate it, see how it affects our life. Okay, where am I deriving my pride from? How can I how can I connect to something that's bigger than pride? That is an aspect of our wholeness and our oneness and our love for one another and just the joy in that. You know, I love helping other people that I love. Why? Because that's what we do. That's what we are. We are love. We are supposed to be helping. So when I'm just doing what I'm supposed to be doing as a fellow loving aspect of the divine that we all are individual expressions of the divine, and I'm just one of them, but I'm connected to all the other expressions, and I'm in alignment with that holy, beautiful, loving expression of God that I'm supposed to be. When I'm doing the right things, I am in alignment with that. When I am in alignment with love, I am in alignment with everything that there is. And I feel this sense of safety and comfort and wholeness and connectedness and love that's much more powerful than I can ever get egoically. So do that. Find out how to do that in your daily life. Like, these big concepts are, I understand sometimes, we're talking about these huge concepts, but the concepts seem huge, and they are huge in a way, but they're the same in the microcosm as they are in the macrocosm. They don't change. So just because I'm talking about being one with the universe and feeling this eternal bliss doesn't mean that you can't implement what I'm saying in a little everyday thing. Go hold the door for somebody going into a grocery store, and don't tell anybody. This is one of the aspects. Like, they teach you this. I heard it in recovery, and I've heard it in a lot of other self-help and spiritual genres. Do something good for somebody else and don't tell anybody, right? Why? Why has that become a thing? Why is that a practice? Why does that seem to benefit people somehow? Because it takes the ego out. Your ego wants to tell everybody how wonderful you are, so you can get external validation and pump up your ego more. And I'm not saying now we can't ever tell anybody anything that we do well. Sure, we can share some wonderful things as part of our lives, but part of most things that I do, people have no idea that I do them. Sometimes the people that I do them for don't even know it was me. But I don't tell many stories of the things that I do on a regular basis. But this is what I mean. This is how we take these concepts and bring them into our everyday life and practice them and play with them and get better at them and experiment with them and embody them and feel them and make them part of us. That's what changes us. Listening to my podcast and thinking it was interesting does jack shit for you. It doesn't change your life. It doesn't benefit you. It doesn't help you. It just strokes your ego because you listened to somebody talking about something positive for a while. So you did something good. So your ego strokes you. And then you just go living the way you lived before. No, take the information, find a way to implement it into your everyday life. That's what changes us. That's where you derive more joy and you grow and you expand, So yeah, that's it. I guess I felt I needed to add that, or divine wisdom felt I needed to add that piece at the end, because that's been coming up a lot lately too, but it didn't really have to do with that. So I felt complete right before I said that last part, as far as that information, but then that came out. I'm just trying to explain how this works with me. So then maybe you might monitor yourself and pay attention to yourself and see if you can kind of notice yourself doing the same version of things that I'm trying to explain right now. I just felt like I was supposed to say something else, and I'm doing a podcast. So I said that little extra part, and then I felt complete after that. But it was interesting to me that I felt complete before I said that little part. It was because it wanted me to kind of change subjects a little bit. The main podcast was over. It said, okay, you're complete, Glenn. I felt this completeness in my chest. So it was like, okay. But then I kept talking, but I didn't try to control it. I just let it go. And that was because there was another little piece that wanted to be added on. I didn't decide to do that. It just happened because I allowed it to. Another thing you can play with. All right. Thank you, peeps. Thanks for listening. Let me know if I can be of service, and I'll talk with you later.